Welcome back. We are talking about legalities of short-term rentals, and we have our special guest today, Anthony Curcio. Anthony, did I butcher your last name yet again, or did I do it correctly this
You're
time?
2 for 2 today so far.
Yes. All right. Let's talk about what are the legalities for short-term rentals. And you want to explain what a short-term rental is to the audience as well.
Short-term rental is, as everyone's probably more commonly known as an Airbnb or a Verbo, where you're renting a property for any length of time, usually under 30 days. It's depending on the where you're staying. Most places that have any kind of rules regarding such short-term rentals, they use 30 days as the parameter. So, I mean, with the advent of the internet and the Airbnb, there's been an onslaught of Airbnb people running Airbnbs out of their homes or out of properties they don't even live in. No other place has been more affected than New York City, obviously. So, in 2023, the short-term rental registration law went into effect, which basically is trying to control the Airbnb market a little bit in the city and keep it from getting out of control. It basically makes it illegal to rent out your apartment for less than 30 days unless you meet certain parameters. Those parameters being no more than 2 paying guests may be hosted at a single time. The host must maintain primary occupancy and reside in the dwelling unit during the stay, and the paying guests must have access to all parts of the listing, what is referred to as a common household, quote unquote. Which, when you think about it, I don't know how many people are comfortable with doing that, where you're opening up your house to people, they have access to the entire house, and you have to be there with strangers. If you're comfortable with that, then go forward, man, and do it. But a lot of people are not comfortable with that, and a lot of times people use the Airbnb as a way to turn their property into an investment property that really wasn't intended for that in the beginning.
For me, I'm going to go back to letting people stay in the home and I'm occupying it. I don't feel comfortable with that. I don't even want my relatives coming over for too long. I'm like, look, you're visiting. It's time for you guys to go. So I couldn't even imagine if I had a tenant in the house. And I'm like, well, what are you doing in my living room? Like, trying to watch TV.
Horror stories out there, and it's a good law. It's for people's safety, and it keeps it controls the infrastructure and that sort of thing. Because if you've got people occupying all these houses, it stresses the infrastructure, and it has an effect on the neighborhood and the community as a whole, for sure.
I think that's one of the main issues what people are concerned about is basically the effect it has on a neighborhood. And you have a lot of people coming in and out, and sometimes basically some people don't feel safe. Like their neighbors have an Airbnb going on, and it's not legalized or whatever the term is, and they have random people coming in. So you as a parent, you might not feel comfortable having random people coming in, and you can't leave your door open because you don't know who's next door. That could affect you and your safety and whatnot.
Exactly.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, especially if you have children and you live in a single family neighborhood, and all of a sudden you see random people popping in and out of a property across the street from you and that sort of thing. Between the parking issues and not knowing who they are, it creates a dangerous condition where there shouldn't be one.
As we're talking, I'm getting questions from people because people are seeing this live. One of the questions that came up is how can a property owner ensure compliance with zoning ordinance and housing standards specific to short-term rentals in their area?
Well, you would hire someone like myself or Evans for starters. But with that being said, depending on the township you live in, you have to see what their short-term rental rules are. A lot of these townships, including the city, they have an office where you basically register your apartment. It's similar to getting a rental permit. And for each Airbnb unit you have, you'd pay a certain fee up front, like an initial fee, and then you'd have annual fees that you would pay. And along with those annual fees, there would be inspections of the property to make sure they're compliant with fire and building code, and you're not creating a dangerous condition. And I'm sorry.
I think the other thing people should be aware of is basically it varies from state to state, town to town. So what happens in one town might be completely different from the next one. So you got to make sure that if you have multiple properties, you have to check all the localities, the legalities, basically from each.
Absolutely. And if you're going to do this as a full-time thing, you need to check with the state because they might make you get additional, apply for like a vendor's license or that sort of thing as well. So there's a lot of regulation that goes into it, a lot of government oversight, and it's for good reason. Your house is not a hotel. A hotel is a hotel. So that's the difference.
So you should definitely check with your insurance company as well. You want to make sure that you're insured. For God forbid, if something happens, you don't want to lose the house, lose the income, lose the house, and basically lose everything at the same time. So check
Absolutely.
with your proper authorities basically when it comes to these things before you decide, hey, I'm going to try this.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm just sifting through some of the questions as we're discussing this. All right, so a question just came up. You kind of addressed this, but just in case for anybody who didn't hear this, what steps should property owners take to obtain the necessary permits or licenses for operating short sale rentals in their jurisdiction?
Basically, yeah, it's kind of what I reiterated before. Checking with your local zoning code, contacting your local municipality, seeing what the regulations are, and you know, you might want to keep in mind what the fines are as well, because they're pretty hefty, I would imagine. But depending on the township, um, and not all town. It's not a blanket statement sometimes for certain townships. For instance, town of Brookhaven, they have a zoning code for that, but however, the houses on Fire Island are exempt because that is just the nature of Fire Island. Everybody rents out their houses for a week here, a week there. And if you basically take that away from Fire Island, you're shutting the place down, and people are probably going to rent it out anyway at that point, and you're creating a bigger problem than there needs to be.
Okay, well, this kind of ties into the conversation we're talking about right now. How do short-term rental regulations differ between cities? I'm going to say cities and towns. And what resources can property owners use to stay informed about these differences?
Yeah, I mean, a short term rental just in general is usually less than a month, because if you're going over 30 days, then you're creating a landlord tenant relationship. Then at that point, you're leasing the house. It's no longer a short term rental, as the term of art is called. What was the other question? I apologize.
The other question was, what resources can a property owner use to stay informed about these differences? You have mentioned a website earlier.
Just read the paper. I would, Newsday is always reporting on this sort of thing. Visit your townships, their website. They always update their website to let you know the latest happenings and what's going on. There's always public notices and public hearings that are occurring at the town-wide level. For people that are looking to do certain things with their property, just keep an eye out for people who want to do a short-term rental. Just stay informed.
Like you mentioned before, this day and age, we all have these devices. You can always Google stuff, and then there's probably a government agency. There is a government agency out there basically that has all the information, depending on what town or city you're in. Just look it up. Just type in short-term rentals and your town, your city, basically, and I'm pretty sure you'll find something.
Short-term rentals. You'll get the listings, then you'll get the town code usually, and they'll tell you, they'll take you to that provision, and you can, take a gander at it. And if you don't understand something, you can ask a professional, and they can guide you through it as well. So
that was going to be my next suggestions. That's one of the professionals, and they'll point you in the right direction.
Yeah.
All right. The next question that we have here is, we kind of went through that. I'm looking at some of the questions. Some of them we discussed already. As I'm looking through the questions, is there anything that you want to add or discuss? Feel free to.
Just be careful. I mean, even if you list it online and you don't rent it out, they can still nail you just for having the listing online. And town of Brookhaven does this especially. They'll go online and they'll peruse the listings, and they'll see, oh, this is in the town of Brookhaven. What are these people on the registration list? Have they gotten their inspections done? And then you're gonna get a summons to go to court, and you'll get a hefty fine on top of having to pay for the fee for the permit and everything else that goes along with that.
So what you're saying is do your due diligence before you do anything.
Absolutely, just like anything else, do your due diligence and get the right information. And even if you have information, confirm it and verify it. Make sure it's correct and it's up to date, because things can change at the blink of an eye with these sort of things.
I got a couple of questions. All right, this one's kind of relevant. How do homeowners association rules and community agreements impact the ability to offer short-term rentals?
Well, every HOA has, they have their bylaws in place. So if you're going to take a look at your bylaws, and that'll pretty much dictate what you can and can't do in your neighborhood. And if it's, if they don't allow it and you're found doing it, they're going to fine you, and they're going to take you to court. So similar to the town.
And then we have one. This one is kind of insurance related. What insurance considerations do property owners need to account for when they're operating a short sale short-term rental.
I'll be honest with you. I don't know if there's short-term rental insurance. I would imagine there is if you're running, if it's a legit business and you have your certificates or whatever you need, your licenses to run that business. You could probably go to an underwriter and get some kind of policy written up for it. But if you're doing it illegally, obviously, you're going to have an issue with your homeowner's insurance. And the other thing is you can't ask, people that are doing short-term rentals, they're not going to be carrying renter's insurance or anything. So you run a big risk there as well.
I would still talk to your insurance person basically and find out what's covered and what's not covered, just to be on the safe side.
For sure. And if you can get the coverage without having to go through getting a license or anything like that, I absolutely would do that if that's what you
talk to somebody who's knowledgeable about this stuff, especially on the insurance side.
Absolutely.
We kind of discussed this. This person's asking the same question again. What strategies can a property owner use to resolve disputes with neighbors or the community arising from short-term rental operations?
Just follow the law, and you'll that'll settle everything. They can be, neighbors are going to get upset at you one way or another, whether you're following the law or not. But as long as you're doing things by the book, you sit down, you talk, just have an open dialogue with your neighbor. I know a lot of people don't like speaking to their neighbors, and that's a lot of times that's 75% of the issue. They don't speak to them and they don't communicate what they're doing and whether, the neighbor has an issue with it or not. If you're doing everything by the book and you're following the law and the rules correctly, you really have nothing to worry about with your neighbor.
All right. There's some questions coming in about permits. Okay, here's one. Basically, what are the penalties for noncompliance?
Fines. Going to court and paying fines, big fines too. Especially if you're a repeat offender, then you're going to have a real big problem. And people like to say it's the cost of doing business, but depending on your township, it could be a misdemeanor on your record too. Especially if you're not protected, if you're not running it with an LLC, if you're personally running it and you're personally liable, you're going to have a criminal record. And you don't want that because you're trying to just make ends meet. That's not the way to go about it.
I'm glad you mentioned the LLC portion of that. Basically, if you're going to do this, definitely talk to your financial advisor, talk to your legal counsel, talk to your realtor, talk to the people, the heads of state based in your area, and find out all the details that you need to make sure that if you're going to run this, that you're covered in all aspects, especially the insurance aspect of this as well. You can never be too ready. So just do your due diligence, do your homework before you get into this. Definitely get an LLC. Whatever your financial counsel tells you to do that. You really don't want to get into trouble basically financially later on if you're running it basically under your own name and whatnot. I think that's pretty much all the questions that we have right now. Anything else you want to add and leave with the audience before we call it a day?
I think we covered it on the topic itself, but I'll give you my contact information. Anthony Curcio, Curcio Law. Phone number 516-809-8483 or my cell 631-943-8351. You can text me at both numbers. I'll receive your text message. Or you can email me, Curcio@Curcio Law PLLC. I'll get back to you within 24 hours to discuss your matter. And you can hit me up on social media, on Instagram and LinkedIn, Curcio Law PLLC. Just look for me.
My information is Evan Saint-Gerard. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it right now, TikTok. We're pretty much all over social media. My contact information, 917-975-5985. Our website is My NY Home Sales. I appreciate people like Anthony to take the time out of their schedule to do these videos just to educate the audience. And these are questions that we get for clients, people that we're working with, clients and customers. And sometimes it's people that we've worked with in the past and they just want to run some scenarios by us. And I'm like, you know what? This, because you have this question, I'm pretty sure other people have this question, and let me get the experts to answer these questions and concerns for people. So I want to say, Anthony, thank you so much.
And thanks for having me again, man. It's always a good time.
Anytime. And then the other thing I wanted to leave with the audience is before you do anything, have a consultation with a professional that you trust, you feel comfortable with, and that's going to give you the best advice for you and your family. Not everything that is being said or being done is going to fit for everybody. So basically, you have to have the conversation and see what we can tailor-made just for you, for your specific situation. With that being said, I'm Evan Saint-Gerard. I hope you got something of value. If you have any questions, feel free to leave comments, share this with a friend, family, and that's about it. Go have a great day.